Good evening, community members, parents and carers. Welcome back following the half term. I hope you had a restful and enjoyable one despite the continued rain, but today the sun was shining, so long may spring be ahead of us. So this evening we are going to cover an RSHE update, specifically focusing on the new statutory guidance which comes into play September 2026, and you're in very safe hands with the RSHE senior team that are introduced shortly. But before I do, we're not expecting any technical difficulties. If we do experience any, please do bear with us. So we are now in our Lent 2 series of our webinars, and I'm hoping that you have seen those communicated in the Parent Carer Bulletin and our social media channels. This is our first one of the Lent 2 webinar series, and you're in for a treat. Our next one I'd like to signpost is on the 5th of March, and that's going to be preparing our young people for their end of year exams. So that's going to be focused on exam readiness and revision top tips led by the academic team. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our head of RSHE, Miss Emily Arthur. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Thank you to all of you who are in attendance tonight. We really appreciate you being here. So tonight we'll hopefully provide an opportunity to discuss RSHE, offering information and insight into what we do at Forest. The fact that you're tuning in suggests that you clearly care about RSHE as much as we do, which is fantastic. We understand the importance of it in your children's lives, and we take seriously the responsibility that we have in our own preparation and delivery of the RSHE curriculum. So, our agenda for this evening, we really want this evening to give you an overview of how RSHE is structured, our rationale, and how we deliver it to all year groups. We're really proud at Forest that it runs a full sort of RSHE programme from our youngest to our oldest pupils that develops across the ages and stages. Tonight, firstly, we are offering this evening a holistic view of that full programme at Forest and how that fits into the national RSHE landscape. Unfortunately, we will not be able to facilitate questions live this evening, but please do email in and we can arrange a further time to call or have a meeting if you have matters that might pertain specifically to your child or have any further questions more generally. So, what is RSHE? And more importantly, why does it matter? So RSHE sits within the spectrum of PSHE in school and is the school subject where children and young people acquire the knowledge, understanding and skills they need to manage their lives now and beyond the white gates. It is the subject that Forest uses to combine relationships and sex education as well as health education and topics related to the skills and strategies needed for living in the wider world. Within this subject, a range of topics are included where we hope to deliver and develop people's sense of their own agency in understanding and advocating for their own health and well-being, but also a subject which gives people the tools needed to be able to tackle any challenges head-on whilst knowing how to ask for help for either themselves or for a friend, and what support looks like in real terms. It is a core part of our provision at Forest and is essential to the holistic education that we provide. Fundamentally, our answer to the question why it matters is because we have a responsibility to teach our pupils to stay safe and be prepared for life in their school years and time with us at Forest and beyond. RSHE teaches them responsibility for their actions to themselves and others and helps young people with the challenges of growing up in a world lived in person and online. It helps develop respectful relationships with others. For example, in RSE, it has the potential to influence young people's sexual behaviour, such as delaying initiation of sex. RSE also keeps young people safe by increasing their understanding and use of contraceptives, mitigates the risk of pornography, and more widely, it can influence children and young people's engagement in risky behaviours. High Impact RSHE aims to contribute to improved mental health, helps tackle sexual harassment and bullying, and safeguards our children. Our answer to this question really could go on, and we were really heartened that in the most recent Pupil RSHE surveys, a significant number of pupils told us that they wanted more time dedicated to RSHE. Without even realising it, they are telling us that they are embodying the school's vision to be curious, to be caring, and to be confident. The importance of RSHE is not limited to the RSHE classroom. We have a whole school approach, yes, with dedicated curriculum time, but it encompasses so much more than that. And this infographic nicely highlights the key stakeholders that play different roles in ensuring our RSHE provision is not only in line with statutory guidance, but relevant to our pupils, their age and stage, but also effectively communicated to parents and carers, as well as all staff, irrespective of whether they are RSHE teachers or not. Things such as staff training and pupil voice play an essential part in our development of RSHE at Forest. All teachers have a duty of care to safeguard our pupils, and this extends beyond the teacher's subject specialisms. So it is important that all teachers are aware of the content being taught, but also so that they can follow safeguarding procedures and also signpost support, alert the relevant designated safeguarding lead or deputy safeguarding lead where necessary. As you can see from the slide, good quality RSE helps pupils make positive choices when it comes to relationships, behaviours, and their safety. Our team is made up of myself as head of RSHE, Grace Green as assistant head of RSHE, and we are responsible for ensuring the curriculum is developed appropriately, that staff are trained, and that any external speakers are vetted suitably. I have regular one-to-ones with both Natasha Milton to update her with relevant RSHE news and progress, but also termly meetings with our link governor, Stephen Berryman. Transparency and communication regarding this subject is incredibly important to us. So this ensures that all relevant parties are aware of steps taken to continue our progress within the RSHE field. We are very lucky that Forest has supported the development of RSHE as fully as it has. As you can see here from the overview, we have come a long way since the head of RSHE role was recognised. We now have a fully trained team of dedicated RSHE staff, as well as the RSHE student ambassadors, a student-led society, as well as an ongoing collaborative relationship with external providers, where pupils have had opportunities to speak out on topics within this subject, as well as continuing to develop our professional networks through the RSHE conference that Forest holds every other year. As you can see here, our focus for this year is to review all the changes and developments that we have already made to ensure that we are compliant with the new statutory guidance, which there'll be more on later. As mentioned, training is vital if we are to ensure effective delivery of RSHE topics. So ensuring our staff are fully trained is imperative for essential delivery inside and out of the classroom. Topics from the RSHE curriculum can bleed into free-form discussions, and in order to create a cohesive and informed culture and shared language, we think all Forest staff should be trained regarding RSHE. This has happened. We also have carried out multiple training sessions for RSHE teachers, specifically, as well as holding drop-down sessions ahead of topics that staff have expressed that they would like additional support with. Staff training is also something that is revisited throughout the year and is not a tick box exercise. Throughout the academic year, and also after external speakers have visited, we ask our pupils for feedback from various surveys. These surveys serve two purposes: as knowledge checks, so that we can see that the curriculum has been successfully understood by our pupils, and if not, it gives us an opportunity to revisit that material. It also provides us with insightful feedback to support our planning for the coming year. The feedback here was overwhelmingly positive, with pupils able to recognise and identify the key themes that have been taught, such as unhealthy relationships, and also what they can do and where they can go to for help. This means that some of the questions gather their opinions on the course, and others check their learning. Here's some anecdotal feedback after external speakers have spoken to Year 10. The main comments suggesting that they were engaged with the topics being spoken about and ultimately wanted more talks and more timetabled curriculum time. Since 2021, we have increased lesson time for all students, and from September 2026, all pupils in years 7, 8, 9 and 11 will have lessons once a week, which is a vast improvement and where the majority of their RSHE learning will occur. Year 10 RSHE will still be delivered by external speakers, only we find that the series of speakers and workshops help to consolidate and reinforce messages, as well as introduce them to age and stage appropriate content. Hearing information from external speakers is something pupils find really useful, particularly when the talks are followed by smaller interactive workshops, which is what we do for many of our talks. And as you can see in the sixth form, RSHE is fully integrated into their personal development curriculum. Regarding external speakers, everyone that comes to speak to the pupils at Forest is vetted. We will always have a call to discuss the topic in question. Slides will always be sent through beforehand for our approval. All speakers must be recommended from trusted peers, such as other reputable schools or people within our network. All speakers must sign our visitors form before coming in and know that if they offer up personalised or biased views, then we will be forced to close the talk down. Both myself and Grace Green attend every RSHE talk to ensure that the standard remains high. So who are our external speakers? So there are a range of speakers that have come to Forest to speak, or who we have undergone training with ourselves, or just used to sense check our resources. We find that working in partnership with agencies such as the RSHE Association, we can ensure the materials that we are using are relevant, up to date, and age and stage appropriate. Our relationships with external providers have enabled our students to participate in wonderful opportunities. 2 of our sixth form students have become community champions for the charity Everyone's Invited. This was a programme that was spearheaded by Everyone's Invited and asked pupils to come up with their own project based on some of the topics that the charity cover. Over the course of last year, Sophie Whiteside and Isla Finster Alabort had 9 sessions with the charity, and the end result was that they have set up a social hub where pupils in younger years can come to speak to older pupils to gain advice for any potential challenges or difficulties that they are going through. Everyone's Invited was so impressed with their work that they invited Sophie and Isla to be the headline speakers at their charity event in October in front of their potential donors, which was such an incredible opportunity. Similarly, Jasper Islam Chowdhury in Year 12 is part of the Everyone's Invited Student Advisory Board. He has been selected to represent the UK as a representative of Forest School and Everyone's Invited to discuss pertinent topics and how nationally these topics can be included with greater effect within schools. And last academic year, the RSHE and EDI student ambassadors worked with another external partners and the RSHE department to create an anti-racism film. This was launched as part of Anti-Bullying Week and served as an important creative opportunity for Forest pupils to act on messages to their peers about anti-racism and things that they felt pertinent to them. Teachers have also been broadening their horizons with our second RSHE conference that Forest has hosted. This time, our focus was on mental health. We had 4 key speakers who discussed making RSHE matter, the importance of early intervention and understanding mental health, and engaging boys in mental health, understanding masculinity, and creating safe spaces. This was a wonderful opportunity for professionals to share best practice and upskill. Teachers took away tangible and practical tips that they could implement in their own RSHE classrooms. So now you've had a flavour of all the things that occur outside the RSHE classroom, Grace Green is going to talk you through some of the content from lessons that happen inside the Forest RSHE classroom. So over to you, Grace.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Emily. It's great to be talking about the RSHE changes to the lessons that we've made. We're really proud of the curriculum that we've put together here and the different ways that we have spiralled that curriculum. And to give you a flavour, we thought we would talk through some of the ways that we might be teaching, particularly in the Michaelmas term. We focus mostly on health, beginning with mental health and then touching on physical health and sexual health. And we spiral this all the way through the different year groups. But generally it means that pupils are learning similar themes and similar content at the same sort of time, which means that they also revisit concepts throughout their time at Forest, just to keep it really embedded and a real shared language amongst the community. When it comes to mental health, we're really passionate about making sure that young people understand that mental health is something that we all have. Mental health is different from mental illness, and that mental fitness just becomes part of the language of how they understand themselves and how they understand their minds, and how that links to their bodies as well, and the importance of that. So everybody teaching year 7, year 8, year 9 and year 11 in the Michaelmas term will be teaching some form of the following ideas. And I'm going to take you through each one and how that might look in a lower school lesson versus in a year 9 or year 11 lesson. So the first is how we talk about emotions, emotional literacy being incredibly important, that pupils are able to name their emotions, to understand their emotions when they show up and what they are, and to recognise how they show up in their bodies as well. In the lower school, we use some fantastic excerpts from the great film Inside Out. I'm sure many of you might have seen it, and your pupils, your children might have seen it too. There's a really brilliant way of explaining and understanding the ways that our emotions interact, but also how they impact our bodies and our feelings and our behaviours. And we use things like a feelings wheel to help give a shared language based on that. Moving on, we might be thinking then about how thoughts, feelings and behaviours influence each other. So in the lower school, we're thinking about separating thoughts from the actions and the behaviours that we take, and the real strength and the benefit of being able to do that, being able to recognise the power that we have in the way that we talk to ourselves and our inner voice. And then in year 11, we might be using more sophisticated language to talk about challenging the pattern of thoughts and behaviours and feelings. Many of you might recognise these as the foundational basis for cognitive behavioural therapy, which obviously has a different context and a different place outside the classroom, but actually many of the theories and many of the ideas behind it can be really useful strategies and tools for young people to understand themselves. So here's a really simple example that we give to young people. We talk to them about a thought that they might have, often an automatic thought that they can't control, something, they look in the mirror, oh gosh, I look awful. This might then be able to recognise their feelings. So how has that thought made me feel? And then how is that going to influence my behaviour? And once pupils can begin to understand the causation between thoughts, feelings and behaviours, and recognising that, in fact, as my arrow indicates, that this can often be a cycle and lead to a cycle potentially of more self-destructive behaviours, that this is really empowering for them to understand that they can start to separate their thoughts from their behaviours, and recognising the power that they have in either challenging their thoughts or in changing their behaviour and looking at what strategies they use. So as you'll see on the next slide, we would be using language that in CBT is known as negative automatic thoughts. So thoughts that we all have that we can't necessarily control. You can recognise some of them down there on the screen. That teacher hates me. I bet she's definitely cross with me. Personalisation or over-personalising, assuming that something is all about us when actually it's probably not. Mind reading, we see this a lot, this kind of comment a lot in young people, particularly with regards to friendship issues and relationships as they navigate the complex social world that is being a teenager. And the last, I'm going to fail all my exams, that idea of catastrophizing. Recognising that these are what psychologists would call cognitive distortions, or we speak to the pupils in the language of thinking traps, and that these are things that we can challenge. Once we recognise that we're doing them, we can begin to challenge them and the impact that they're having on our behaviour as well. In year 7 and 8, pop back. In year 7 and 8, we might be using this in the language of your inner critic versus your inner friend. So recognising that the way we talk to ourselves has immense power, and turning up the volume on our inner friend. We might talk about things such as affirmations with them and positive self-talk, and recognizing the power that we have to be able to change how we feel when we can recognize the difference between thoughts and facts, and that these are tools that all people, young people, adults need, and hopefully gives them a real sense that they can look after themselves really well as they go through life. Next, we might be thinking about the ways that what we might call in CBT behavioural activation, so how we use our behaviours and how we change our behaviours to influence how we feel. We use a really simple language with the lower school of cycle breakers. So you can see here an example of the cycle of low mood. So somebody feels low or feels a bit sad, they might use a coping behaviour. For many of our young people, they really recognise this one, scrolling TikTok, the doom scroll, and that temporarily it helps us feel better, but actually at the end of all of that, when they stop scrolling, they feel worse, they've stayed up late, they haven't done that thing they're really stressed about, and the cycle continues. And so when we've presented this, we talk about what we can do about it through the language of cycle breakers and how we break that cycle of low mood, and how we don't need to wait to feel better before we do those things. And actually it's the other way round, that using those strategies, using those skills in our mental fitness toolkit are the key to helping us break out of a cycle. And we make a really clear distinction that this is about mental health and mental fitness as opposed to mental illness, which of course might have kind of different strategies and different types of support that's needed, but that everybody can learn the kind of strategies that are really, really helpful for them to thrive. And as you can imagine, when we're talking to young people about these strategies, we're using all of the things that you would also be teaching your children, the importance of things like exercise, diet, gratitude, meditation, journaling, getting out in nature, doing things they enjoy, social connection, and of course, the all-important sleep. And using these strategies not only because your teachers tell you to or because your parents do, but actually getting them, particularly as they get older, to understand the science of why these things work. So why does it work? Why does it benefit our mental health when we go and do exercise, or when we spend time volunteering, or when we engage in these positive coping strategies? This also allows us to open up a conversation with older pupils about what we might call unhealthy coping mechanisms and coping strategies. Self-destructive behaviours, the obvious ones perhaps leading us into conversations about substances or about self-harm or other destructive behaviours, but also just more generally in terms of things that we do that don't necessarily benefit our future selves, and recognising that we have agency in that and that we can control how we feel by using our mental fitness toolkit. And the toolkit is something that we come back to with the pupils every single year, not just what they're doing, but also why. We use Maslow's hierarchy of needs to understand, or help pupils to understand, that the basis of all mental well-being is their physical well-being first and foremost, and that all of your other needs, social, emotional, self-actualization, are not going to be met if we're not taking care of our physical health as well. And so the way of teaching physical health and mental health as fundamentally interlinked concepts allows our pupils to get a really broad, holistic understanding of what it is to actually be healthy and take care of ourselves in loads of different ways. And then lastly, we talk to young people all across year 7, 8, 9 and 11 about the teenage brain, and just giving them a really basic understanding of the wiring of the teenage brain. We know as adults that teenagers find it a lot more difficult to identify and recognize risks, and that this makes them more susceptible to risky behaviors, to poor decision making, and to kind of getting involved in more complex and more destructive issues. And so therefore we know that it's really empowering, in fact, to teach young people about that and about their brain, and about the fact that their prefrontal cortex, the part that keeps them safe and thinks really logically and rationally, is not necessarily easier to access for them. And so instead, how they can recognize when that might put them at risk, and why they need to take extra care with regards to risk, threat and stress as well. And in a really basic, simple way, obviously we've simplified this, recognizing for them that they have 3 parts of their brain. So their survival brain, what we might know as the amygdala, the part that gives us our instincts, recognizing what those instincts are, those fight, flight, flop, freeze, fawn instincts, and in the obvious sense of how that might show up in a dramatic way, but actually also in those really subtle ways, things like a looming deadline, or a really, really stressful pile of homework that they just are avoiding. Maybe recognizing, like, could we be in a state of freeze? Could we be avoiding it? Could we be trying to run away from it by using a different coping strategy? Then recognizing the limbic system, or what we call the emotional brain for young people, and the importance of naming and feeling and recognizing our emotions, and also moving through our emotions, and positive and healthy ways to do that. Being able to identify, I'm angry, I feel sad, and then knowing what to do with that information. And recognizing that only once we've done those things, once we've regulated our amygdala, we've regulated our emotional system, our limbic system, and we've felt those emotions and we've moved through them, only then are we able to access our rational thinking, problem-solving brain, or our prefrontal cortex. And in a really oversimplified way for the youngest pupils that we have, but actually as they move through, teaching them to apply this to loads of different things, to emotional regulation and emotional expression, but also to how they deal with threatening situations in their relationships, relationships, we teach them how to argue effectively when we move on and talk about this in a relationship context in the Lent term, thinking about how we might apply this logic and our understanding of ourselves and our self-awareness to how we have conflict with each other, and how we might try and resolve conflict, and how we might speak to others knowing that we might be experiencing some of these threat responses, or that what might make us be feeling under threat. So I hope you'll agree it's a really interesting, challenging, complex scheme of work. That's deliberate. We want it to be complex. We want it to be intellectually stimulating, and we want it to be new and different. And we want pupils to have a real sense of the importance of this for their life, not just for as they move through being a teenager. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Grace, for explaining that. I think that was a really clear sort of insight into what happens in our sort of RSHE classroom, and hopefully gives you a taster of some of the topics that we cover as well as our approach. It was reassuring to hear that ISI also recognised the importance of that RSHE plays in our whole school curriculum for the holistic development of our pupils. So obviously the things that we're doing in and outside of the classroom is definitely in line with things that they are sort of suggesting are things that we should be fulfilling, and we are sort of exceeding. Similarly, we have recently played sort of a role, or RSHE has played a role in being recognised for Forest's Excellence in Pupil Development Award, which is really, really reassuring, because obviously we put a lot of time, effort and consideration and care into how we discuss these really, really important topics with our young people. So it was nice to have that reflected back as part of this award as well. So thinking further about all the things that we do, but now all the things that we may need to change, we have had a lot of key sort of changes since RSHE has become statutory. So it's been having a bit of a turbulent time of late, with various governments wanting to change things. So here's an overview of the key changes that have occurred since RSHE became mandatory in 2019 for all schools as a safeguarding measure. So that was 2019. In 2021, we had the Ofsted Rapid Review, which highlighted the urgent need to address sexual harassment and abuse in schools, followed by draft guidance in 2024, and then ultimately the finalised guidance that was announced in July 2025 of this year and must be implemented by September 2026. So an overview of some of the key changes. So there's a greater focus on misogyny and violence against women and girls, topics surrounding personal safety, impacts of rapid technological advancements such as AI and deepfakes and things. There was also a strong emphasis on clear communication with parents. So as we do every year, you'll have received a copy of each lesson title that we'll be teaching, and which is sent out to you termly. We will also be updating our RSE policy for September 26. And once this has happened, this will be on the school website. So if you have any further specific questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Similarly, there is also a big focus on pupil voice. This is something that we already take very seriously, but of course welcome any further opportunities for further discussions from pupils. So what does this new guidance mean for us? It means that for now, and this academic year, we'll be sticking to the existing guidance of 2019 regarding what is statutory, as that is the case until August 31st, 2026. However, we will be adapting materials throughout the course of this year, so we are compliant by September 2026, and will of course update parents and carers once these changes have been implemented. 2 points that are interesting to note is that parents and carers do have the right to withdraw from one element of the RSE space, which is sex education. Now, this can happen up until 3 terms before your child turns 16. And that whilst health education is not compulsory in the independent sector, as RSE is, it is something that we do have as part of Forest's curriculum, as we feel that it's important for the holistic development of our pupils. So at Forest, all of these components, both RSE and health, fall under RSHE. So PSHE and RSE are compulsory for all schools, and additionally, we are required to have policies for both. These policies are reviewed annually and signed off by the leadership team and the school governors. These policies are accessible for all on our school website, but the 2 pieces of key government issued statutory guidance that relate to RSE specifically and safeguarding children. So one of these is KICSI, or Keeping Children Safe in Education, and this is updated annually as it's the key document that relates to safeguarding and child protection in educational settings. So it's a 178-page document. So I'll just share with you a few lines that relate directly to RSHE. Schools and colleges play a crucial role in preventative education. Preventative education is most effective in the context of a whole school or college approach that prepares pupils and students for life in modern Britain and creates a culture of zero tolerance for sexism, misogyny, misandry, homophobia, biphobic and sexual violence or harassment. The school or college will have a clear set of values and standards upheld and demonstrated throughout all aspects of school or college life. These will be underpinned by the school or college's behaviour policy and pastoral support system, as well as by a planned programme of evidence-based RSHE delivered in regularly timetabled lessons and reinforced throughout the whole curriculum. Such a programme should be fully inclusive and developed to be age and stage of development appropriate, especially when considering the needs of children with SEND and other vulnerabilities. This really does frame all of our approach here at Forest. So as we draw to a close on today's session, there are a few other elements we would like to show and share with you. Firstly, this is an example of our additional support links, which is designed to signpost our pupils to sources of further information based on the specific lesson they have just received. These appear in every lesson and is referred to frequently in lessons so that pupils know that they can access additional support. We also have our digital partners, which are also attached to every lesson, as well as in the pupil notices every week. In touching on a range of topics that pupils may find difficult to process, we want to assure them that there is support in school via our established pastoral care structures and also reliable external sources that we can point them to. Of course, we know that you at home are incredibly important sources of support. In essence, we hope that you will lean into conversations with your children at home. Keep it simple and honest, but do talk to them about puberty and sexual intercourse and relationships. Field the tricky questions, but let them know that they can come and talk to you. Take a keen interest in what your child is viewing online and keep up to date with developments in topics that relate to RSHE, which are in the news almost every day. For example, the rise of vaping. And know that you're not alone. We are here to have joined up conversations with you if you're worried about something that your child raises. We will do what we can to help, and do reach out to your children's pastoral team to begin that dialogue. And know that there are reliable sources of support to you as parents. We highlight just 3 here: Brooke for sexual health, the Wellbeing Hub for all matters relating to wellbeing of young people, which you can access on the parent portal, and ChildNet for online matters. We do hope that this evening has given you an insight into RSHE here at Forest, but of course we continue to move forward. A subject like RSHE is constantly evolving, and as such, our curriculum is constantly developing and being reviewed. This evening, we have been part of the collection of Forest Focus webinars that cover a range of different topics, many of which have an RSHE focus. I will try to highlight these to you when I write to you each term as well. As we said earlier, the RSE guidance from Department for Education will be implemented ahead of next academic year in September 26, whereby the RSE policy will also be updated to reflect this. Once these changes have been made, these will be signposted to you so that you can also review. And finally, following this evening, we will curate a pack of digital resources from this evening to be sent to you via email. That pack will include links to our policies and the slides from this evening's presentation. Thank you so much for listening.